What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Uzumaki clan finds Naruto council bashing? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. 6 years after Kyuubi attack, an old man walked down the road towards Konoha. Seeing the large gates up ahead, he seemed to pick up his pace. This man donned a black and red chi-pao. The loose clothes seemed to hide his physique and allowed for a wide range of movements. He wore pieces of armor above the silken robes, reminiscent of the samurai from ages ago. Of course, the only samurai now were from the land of iron. The armor bore many scars of battle from the Second Shinobi World War. All in all, this man held a regal air about him, his back straight, long strands of graying white hair trailed behind him, bunched together in a knot very much like the Hyuga clan. As he got near the gates of Konoha, he stopped when he heard a voice call out. "Halt! Please surrender your travel papers and identification for inspection," called out one of the two eternal Chunin, namely, Kotetsu. "Here they are. I hope everything is in order." The man provided his papers to the Chunin. As Kotetsu examined the documents, he decided to ask questions according to standard protocol. "What is your reason for visiting Konoha?" "I'm mainly here to talk to the Hokage to discuss matters pertaining my clan. Other than that, I would like to visit family," the man answered politely. Although his family were dead, and he was just here to pay respects, he was still technically here to visit his family. "And which clan are you from?" Kotetsu asked, now finished inspecting the papers and handing it back to the man. The man raised an eyebrow at the question. "Did he even look at my papers at all?" "The Uzumaki clan. You did inspect my papers, didn't you?" the man asked in a "are you stupid" tone. "Air. Yeah. Wait, I thought the Uzumaki clan was wiped out during the Shinobi Wars?" Kotetsu asked, this time truly intrigued. Azuma walked up next to him, wondering what took so long just to look over some papers of an old man. Catching a little of what was last said, Azuma decided to pitch in. "Yeah, they were. Why do you need to know?" Azuma asked his buddy. "Well, this guy here claims he's part of the Uzumaki clan." "Did you read his name?" Azuma asked his friend as if he was stupid. "Air. Yeah," Kotetsu answered, now feeling a little stupid. "And was his family name Uzumaki?" Azuma decided to take it another step. "Yes." Kotetsu now felt really stupid. "Then he is probably some of the last remnants of the Uzumaki clan. They were spread out across the Shinobi nations last I heard," Azuma informed his friend. That's when the old man decided to butt in. "Well, this young man certainly knows his history," the old man said while pointing at Azuma. Azuma flushed in embarrassment from the praise. Scratching the back of his head, he chuckled a bit. Kotetsu decided he had enough and learned more about this man that was one of the last surviving members of a clan once feared and admired by everyone. "You said you were here to visit family. We don't know any Uzumaki in this village, except one. And he's quite the prankster. Last I heard he was an orphan." Kotetsu grinned at what little Naruto would pull around the village to gain attention. He trailed off at the end a little sadly. This news, however, was somewhat troubling to the old man. Troubling, yet a little sense of hope had filled him. Did Kushina have a child? Why was I not informed of this? Now very interested, the old man decided to ask the questions. "You said you only knew one Uzumaki, correct?" he asked sternly. Sensing the seriousness, both Chunin stopped laughing and answered at the same time. "Yes," they answered with a nod of the head. "Then tell me, would you have heard of a woman named Kushina Uzumaki?" the old man asked, now with a hint of sadness in his eyes. The Chunin pairs opened wide in recognition. "Of course, the Hokage's wife, who wouldn't know of her?" Azuma answered by himself this time. He turned to look at Kotetsu, who looked away, who looked a little shameful that he didn't know. Azumo's sweat dropped. "Yes, she was my daughter." Both Chunin's eyes were wide as dinner plates now. She had been selected to be the next Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko because of her special chakra. "Now, what's this of a living male Uzumaki in Konoha?" the man asked. His seriousness came back. Snapping out of their stupor, they answered his question. "Hi, his name is Naruto Uzumaki, a little prankster. We're good friends of his." Azuma answered again. Kotetsu chuckled a little. "Yeah, we would often direct the Anbu chasing after him in the wrong direction. But he's surprisingly fast for his age, isn't he?" Kotetsu added, more a reply to his friend than anything. The man looked to be in deep thought. He looked up and asked another question. "How old is young Naruto?" This question raised some flags within the Chunins' minds. They looked into the man's eyes and saw no hints of malice or evil in them. Looking at each other and nodding, they decided to tell him about Naruto. He has just turned 6 a few days ago. Kotetsu answered. So his birthday is on October the 10th? Yes, that is correct. Izumo answered this time. Interesting, born on the day the Kyuubi is released from my daughter, and the day both Minato-kun and Kushina-chan died. Both Chunin were now swearing bullets. This man, on the verge of finding out that Naruto is the current Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, if the Hokage found out, their asses would be sent to Ibiki and Enko straight away. Izumo deciding to give false information to the man in hopes of him not finding out who Naruto was opened his mouth to speak. Kotetsu on the other hand decided to weigh the pros and cons of the situation. If the man was indeed of the Uzumaki clan and Naruto was a real Uzumaki, then little Naruto would finally have a friend. However, if this man isn't a real Uzumaki, then what do we do? Kotetsu looked up and saw his friend about to say something. He reached out his hand and grabbed Izumo's shoulder, stopping him from saying anything. Izumo turned and looked at Kotetsu, a little surprised. Seeing Kotetsu mouth something to him, he turned and walked closer to Kotetsu to hear what he was saying. I think we should tell him. Kotetsu whispered. Are you out of your mind? We could die from this. Or worse, Naruto could get hurt. Izumo whisper yelled back. I know we've all done something like a half whisper half yelling before. Yeah, but think about it. If he's a real Uzumaki, then Naruto will have a chance at having a family. And even if he isn't, the Hokage would be able to stop him from hurting Naruto. Kotetsu argued his point. Izumo thought about it for a bit, and then agreed with his friend. They would tell this man who and what Naruto is. Izumo turned around to address the man once again. Sir, I'm not supposed to tell anyone this, but you look trustworthy enough. Naruto was born 6 years ago, on the night of the Kyuubi attack. And his circumstances are a bit unique. You see, he is what your daughter was when she was alive. Izumo calmly stated, though on the inside he was truly hoping that this man bore no ill will towards Naruto. The look on the man's face said it all. Surprise, then shock, then happiness, then anger. Thank you for this information. I must be going to see the Hokage now. And the man walked briskly towards the Hokage tower. The two Chunin looked at the man's retreating back. Izumo was still contemplating about the emotions he saw on the man's face. Then he turned a little, before stopping dead in his tracks. His eyes growing wide, and the look of shock on his face. Kotetsu looked to his friend who seemed frozen. Dude, you okay there? Izumo didn't reply for a few minutes. Kotetsu looked a little confused at what happened when Izumo finally replied. Kotetsu, think about it. Naruto was born on the same day the Kyuubi attacked. So, we all know what happened that night. No, not that. We only knew that Kushina-sama was a Jinchuriki, and Kyuubi somehow escaped. And, how does this relate to Naruto? Kotetsu looked a bit perplexed. Think about it, the Kyuubi could only escape if the seal got weaker. And what could cause a seal to get weaker? Izumo prompted his friend. Kotetsu took up a thinking position, bringing out all his knowledge on sealing that he learned from what books he read on the subject. Though he never went in depth. A seal can get weaker when the life force of the host gets weaker. This can be caused by a number of outside forces, such as battle. While the seal can also get weaker by another seal on it, or if some stress was placed on the seal. Do you think Kushina-sama fell in battle that night? Kotetsu asked his friend. No, but you're close. Under what conditions does a woman's life force get weaker? Izumo prompted again. Kotetsu thought hard again. The only reason I can think of is childbirth. His eyes were now as wide as possible. You don't think that Naruto is Kushina-sama's son, do you? Kotetsu asked in shock. He may very well be her son. Izumo answered back, still staring in the same direction. Kotetsu blinked once, twice. It didn't make sense to him. Wait, aren't Uzumaki supposed to have red hair? There's no way Naruto can be Kushina-sama's son. He's blonde. Kotetsu denied any connections between the deadly kunoichi and the playful child. Sure, their personalities were very similar. Well, exactly similar, but that didn't mean they were related. While his hair may not be an Uzumaki red, but who do you know is the husband of Kushina-sama and also has blonde hair? Izumo prodded Kotetsu again, this time giving huge hints as to who Naruto's father was. Kotetsu still couldn't understand what Izumo was saying, and was wondering what Izumo has been staring at for the last few minutes. Following his gaze, his eyes widened to epic proportions. He could only utter 2 words. Oh, shit. Izumo was the same. Yeah, shit. As both Chunin stood there, staring at the Hokage mountain. They couldn't believe what they just found out. They would later go to see the Hokage as soon as their shifts were over. Meanwhile, in the Hokage tower, a man stormed up the stairs, though he didn't make a sound as he took each step. Weird, right? Storming without making a sound. He didn't even notice or hear the secretary's protests as he barged into the Sandame's office. Slamming the door in the face of the secretary, he looked into the face of a surprised Sarutobi Hiruzen. Hisashi, what brings you here? Sarutobi asked the now identified Hisashi. Why didn't you tell me Kushina-chan had a son? Hisashi asked Sarutobi. Sarutobi's smile seemed to falter a bit, but he reinforced it as soon as he caught it slipping. My, what do you mean? I didn't know Kushina-san had a son? The Sandame lied, though inside he was panicking, quickly thinking up actions he could take to avoid the shit storm up ahead, but it was already too late. Don't play games with me, Sarutobi. Hisashi exploded. I know she had a son, with the name Naruto. This time he spoke softer. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed. He couldn't escape this man's wrath, lest all of Konoha be destroyed. I'm sorry for keeping it from you, but I wanted Naruto to have a normal childhood here in Konoha. Sarutobi looked down, not meeting the eyes of the Uzumaki clan head. We've brought him here, Hokage-sama, said the cat-masked Anbu. Her voice clearly female. Good, dismissed. Sarutobi waved them off. Hi. And with a poof, they were gone. Gigi. Naruto yelled out. He ran and tackled the Hokage into a hug. Hey Naruto-kun. Sarutobi smiled at his adoptive grandson. Hello, Naruto. A voice came from the side. Naruto turned to look up at the man in front of him. He looked to be in the 30s to him, but his hair said otherwise. Naruto tilted his head to one side and pointed at the man while looking at Sarutobi. Who's that old man, old man? Sarutobi sighed at his lack of respect for the most powerful ninja in the village. Hisashi seemed to chuckle. After all, it wasn't every day you see the god of shinobi being talked down to by a 6-year-old child. He, Sarutobi pointed at the man, is your grandfather on your mother's side. He couldn't be here for you because of certain situations not allowing you to be with him. Naruto looked a bit sad that he had a grandfather all his life, but he didn't know who he was. But was kind of happy that he didn't willingly abandon him. Naruto, Hisashi said. Naruto looked at him. I want to take you away from the village for 10 years to be trained. Sarutobi looked like he was about to object, properly trained. Hisashi emphasized. He already knew what a Jinchuriki's life entailed, so he didn't need to say any more to convince Sarutobi. While the Sandame himself looked away, ashamed of his own village, knowing that they hated Naruto for what he carried, and many viewed him as the Kyuubi itself. Really? You mean I get to become an awesome super cool ninja? Hisashi and Sarutobi both chuckled this time. Yes, but the training will be very very hard. And remember, we won't be coming back until you're 16. Naruto looked a little down at this. Sarutobi smiled and pulled him into a hug. It's okay Naruto-kun. Go with your grandfather. This is a once-in-a-lifetime deal to learn from possibly the strongest man apart from the Rikudo Sennin to live. Naruto's eyes grew wide at this declaration. He couldn't believe that his grandfather was stronger than his, well, grandfather. Really? He's stronger than even you, Gigi? Naruto asked the Hokage in shock and a little awe. Hisashi seemed to smile at Naruto's purity, knowing how most Jinchuriki were treated. Sarutobi chuckled a little. Yes Naruto, he's that powerful. He held of an army by himself after all. If Naruto's eyes could get any wider, they would pop out of his head by now. He's that strong? Hisashi chuckled and answered for Hiruzen. I think the Hokage is exaggerating a bit. While I did hold off an army by myself, it was through my comrades who gave their lives in order to defend their home that allowed me to prepare. They bought me time while I drew a large-scale seal that would trap the enemies and drain their chakra so I could defeat them. Hisashi said a bit solemnly at the end. As soon as Naruto heard the words, seal, trap, enemies, defeat them, he wanted to know what technique could be so powerful. Nay, what's a seal? Naruto asked, genuinely interested. Sarutobi chuckled and thought to himself, only an Uzumaki would be so intrigued by seals. Any other ninja would run away in fear because of the difficulty and the long time it takes to learn. Do you want to learn, Naruto-kun? Hisashi asked with a gentle smile across his face. When Naruto nodded vigorously, his heart leapt with joy. Seeing such a young Uzumaki take interest in such art filled him with joy. I'll teach you on our 10-year training trip. Naruto leapt and yelled in joy. Sarutobi smiled happily for his adoptive grandson, his heart at ease now that someone would truly take care of him. Sarutobi stood up and put his pipe away after cleaning it out. Well then, let me just give you a few jutsu that might help you along the way, and then I'll let you pack and you can leave tomorrow morning. Is that fine with you, Hisashi-san? Hisashi nodded in confirmation. With that, Sarutobi set about to writing a few jutsu onto a blank scroll that he felt would benefit Naruto. Namely the Kage Bunshin, Kanai, Shuriken Kage Bunshin, Bunshin Daibakuha, and a few other genjutsu. I hope this will suffice for now, Sarutobi said, handing the scroll to Hisashi. Hisashi took the scroll and nodded. I would give Naruto his inheritance, but if I know Minato, and I know him well, he already has that covered somehow. Chuckling in understanding, I agree, Minato was always a smart kid. Sighs, no point dwelling over the past. Hisashi bowed to Sarutobi before leaving the room. Bye Gigi. I'll be back for the academy exams. Datbeo. Naruto yelled out, waving his hands. Sarutobi waved back with a small smile on his face. Come back quickly, Naruto, it'll get too dull here without you around. Sarutobi Hiruzen seemed to sigh for the 100th time that day. Putting on his Hokage hat, he stood up and stretched quickly. He had a council meeting to get to after all. It wouldn't do to be late. After all, the village doesn't need another Kakashi. Front gates. It was a scorching hot day in Konoha, even though it wasn't summer yet, and Izumo and Kotetsu were, as always, on guard detail. They sat in the shade of the booth, avoiding the waves radiating from the sun. Yet, try as they might, avoiding the heat was another problem. Man, I'm bored, Izumo stated, fanning himself with his hands. Turning his head, his sweat dropped at the sight of his partner Kotetsu sleeping. Oi, wake up, we're supposed to be on guard duty. His friend, in his sleep, gave a snort as a reply. Izumo sighed. He decided to take some action. Standing up, walking to the other side of the booth, a savage grin came upon his face. Leaning over Kotetsu, he raised both his hands high in the air. Taking in a deep breath, he slammed both hands down on the table, one on each side of Kotetsu's head, while screaming at the top of his lungs. Wake the fuck up. It suffices to say that Kotetsu was not amused. He was not sporting a bruise at the back of his head. Yet at the same time, Izumo was sporting a fractured nose. Why, you might ask? Well, since Kotetsu was so startled, his head shot straight up. With Izumo leaning directly over his head, something bad was bound to happen. The back of Kotetsu's head impacted against Izumo's face. Hard. What the hell, man? You couldn't let me sleep? An irate Kotetsu yelled at his friend. We're supposed to be guarding the gate, not sleeping. Izumo answered coolly. Kotetsu twitched. It's not like we do anything anyways. It was at this scene that a young man, looking about 17 years old, walked through the gates completely ignoring the pair arguing. This young man was standing at 191 centimeters. Approximately 6 feet 3. He wore a black cloak that went down to his ankles. The hood of the cloak covered any facial features, save the mouth. On the back of the cloak, a red swirl showed that the man was either an Uzumaki or from Uzushio-gakure. Underneath the cloak, he wore the standard Uzushio uniform without any armor. Cloak is Akatsuki cloak but with a hood and no clouds. He seemed to float forwards like a ghost, not making a sound as he moved. Almost making through the gate, he stopped when he heard a voice call out from beside him. Hey, you need to show us your papers before you can go in. Izumo shouted, running up to the mysterious man. The man turned around to face the Chunin. He reached into his cloak, and with a poof, a scroll signifying his identification came out. He handed the papers to the surprised Chunin. Weird, I couldn't sense any chakra from that seal. Come to think of it, I can't sense this guy's chakra at all. It's like he's not even in front of me. As Izumo took the papers, he tried to look at the man's face through the hood, but no matter how he looked he still couldn't see his eyes or face, just the man's mouth. Izumo looked down at the papers and started inspecting them. Kotetsu, finally getting off his lazy ass, walking up to Izumo to stand beside him, he yawned. Anything wrong? Kotetsu asked his friend. Everything seems to be fine, at least on paper. Izumo said as he closely scrutinized the scroll in front of him. Can I see that? Kotetsu asked, though he was already taking the scroll out of Izumo's hands. It says here that your name is Uzumaki. Naruto. Too. Kotetsu blinked a few times, rereading the name over and over. It seemed very familiar to him for some reason. Izumo on the other hand looked very surprised. He stared at this giant in front of him, not believing this man in front of him was the kid that left Konoha 10 years ago. After all, the kid loved to prank others and was very outspoken. This man in front of him was reserved. He carried an air about him like a hyuga, like a noble, but without the arrogance that usually came with the title. Just then, Kotetsu's mind clicked. He had remembered who Naruto was, and came the intelligent reply. Woot? His mouth hung slightly open, eyes wide. He looked up from the scroll to Naruto, then back at the scroll, and back at Naruto. This happened a few times until he fainted on the spot. Naruto chuckled a little. Yo Izumo-san, how are ya? His voice, although deeper, was still cheery. Hi Naruto-kun. You've grown so tall. Izumo literally had to tilt his head up to look Naruto in the eyes. Or where his eyes should be. Yeah. Hey, I need to go talk to Hokage Gigi. Think I can get my ID back? Yeah sure, here you go. Izumo handed Naruto the scroll, who rolled it up and sealed it back into his cloak somewhere. Walking off, Naruto picked up his speed when he was a good distance away. Izumo stood there in shock. The full weight of the situation had not sunk in yet. His friend Kotetsu, however, fell asleep on the ground. He would not wake up until much later. He would later find out that he was left laying there on the ground for close to 6 hours. Hokage Tower. Naruto walked up the stairs to the office. The secretary below waved him in, knowing that the Hokage was probably slacking off and reading that orange book of his. As Naruto came upon the doors to the office, he heard giggling inside. What is that? He leaned into the door and heard more giggling. Oh Misako, you naughty girl. Naruto twitched. He knocked on the door very loudly, hoping that the Hokage would at least put his book away before letting him enter. This time he heard a fumbling of papers, what sounded like many objects falling onto the ground. Then he heard a loud thump and curses soon followed afterwards. Naruto's sweat dropped, wondering what was going on until he heard the clearing of a throat. Come in. Opening the doors, Naruto silently shuffled into the room. Closing the door behind him, he turned to face the aged Cage. How may I help you, young man? The Cage asked. Well, you can start off by giving me a hug after 10 years. Or have you forgotten who I am already? Naruto fake sniffled a little at the end. I don't believe we have met. Sarutobi eyed the man in front of him suspiciously. You really forgot me, old man? How could you? Naruto crossed his arms across his chest, a pout on his face. Even though the Hokage knew the man in front of him was just joking around, it wouldn't do for a Cage to be disrespected. You know you are talking to the Hokage, right? You should show some respect. Sarutobi said sternly, yet in a somewhat kind tone. Sighs, you really are getting old man. It's me, Naruto. And with that, Naruto pulled the hood down from his head. A mane of blonde hair flopped out. His face unmarred by the whisker marks that used to be there. If one saw him right now, they would think that the fourth came back to life. Sarutobi just sat there, gaping like a fish. Woot? And he fainted. Oh come on, not again. Naruto wanted to pull his hair out in frustration. 15 minutes later. One fully resuscitated Hokage later. It's been a while, Naruto-kun. You've grown so tall. Sarutobi smiled and looked proudly at his adoptive grandson. Yeah, 10 years. I learned everything I could possibly learn from Hisashi Gigi. He even told me that my training was finished 3 years ago and that I should travel the shinobi nations to learn the other skills that shinobi need to know. Mainly Gen-Tai and Kenjutsu. I can create my own ninjutsu given enough time, so you won't have to worry about that. Cage Bunshins are great like that. And so I traveled the nations for 3 years. I found 2 most peculiar styles of taijutsu, and I've learned kenjutsu from a few ex-swordsmen of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Sarutobi's eyes widened at that point. He had heard about the rebellion in Kirigakure, and he also knew of the history of the 7 Swordsmen. To be able to be taught in kenjutsu by the best, How strong had Naruto become? So anyways, the last few months, I just wandered around the nations with nothing to do. That is, until I came into contact with the Kyuubi for the first time. Sarutobi had a little sliver of fear and doubt in his heart now. That night 10 years ago, he had straightened out the council. He also told them of Naruto's full heritage. Needless to say, that caused a huge fuss over what would happen to Naruto. Sarutobi had told them that Naruto was going on a 10-year training trip with his biological grandfather. He then told them that the matter would be continued when Naruto came back and forbade them from telling anyone about Naruto's heritage until he was ready. But now that Naruto had met the Kyuubi personally, would he hate the village? I hate this village. Sarutobi's world came crashing down. But before he could break down and cry, Naruto kept talking. It's too hot during the summers and too cold during the winters. The weather is just too troublesome. Sarutobi's mind had just registered what happened. Was his intelligent reply. At least in Uzushio, the temperatures were moderate, because we were surrounded by the sea. Here, you've got nothing in terms of temperature control, Naruto stated. Sarutobi let go a sigh of relief. For a second he thought Naruto would try to destroy this village. Shaking himself out of his stupor, he asked a question this time. So Naruto, could you tell me more on what happened when you met the Kyuubi? Yeah, I would, but isn't today graduation day? Can you just let me go and get the tests over with? Naruto pleaded with his old man. Sarutobi sighed again. Fine, however, after the tests you come straight to me to tell me about what happened. Deal? Sarutobi proposed. Deal, Naruto answered happily. Quickly taking out a small slip of paper and scribbling on it, he handed it to Naruto. Naruto, who took the note and read it, looked at the Hokage as if he was 5. No offense, but your handwriting sucks. Sarutobi twitched. That was a blow to his pride. Over 70 years old, and here he was being lectured by a teen about his handwriting. Just go, he yelled. Okay, sheesh. No need to get your panties in a bunch. Naruto jumped out the window and headed towards the academy. Wherever that was. Sarutobi sighed again. Then he noticed something. Why couldn't I sense his chakra at all? 30 minutes later, Naruto had already circled the village 3 times, yet he still couldn't find the academy. Arg, where the hell is it? He yelled to the sky. Where's what? A girl giggled. Naruto looked at the girl in front of him, blinked a few times, then flushed in embarrassment. I'm looking for the ninja academy, do you know where it is? Silly, you're right in front of it. The girl pointed behind him. Naruto turned around and saw a huge building with the words, Academy, in big bold letters above the gate. He slapped his forehead. How could I miss such an obvious sign? Thank you, miss. Naruto bowed to the girl. No problem, she said before she went her own way. Naruto turned back around and walked through the gates. Inside the academy, Naruto walked down the halls. 206, 206, 206, where are you? Let's see, 315? How the hell did I get on the 3rd floor? Naruto then quickly found a staircase and went down a floor. Let's see, 206, that-a-way. Naruto quickly ran off down the halls. Classroom. The chattering of the classroom was overpowering the voice of Iruka. Shut up, Iruka yelled at the class. Yes, it is classified as demonic speech when Iruka yells at his class to shut up. The whole class quieted down, visibly cowed by the overpowering Saki, killing energy, intent, leaking from Iruka. Iruka sighed, then took a deep breath, about to speak when, knock knock, he was cut off by someone knocking on the door. He sighed again, walking up to the door and opening it. He was surprised to see a teen the same age as his class hand him a note. He took the note and read it over 2 times to make sure that he was reading it correctly. He sighed again. Why did I have to take this job? He asked himself. Turning to the class, Iruka addressed them. Students, we have a new student here to take the genin tests with you all. He was recommended by the Hokage himself. He has been trained by his clan for 10 years outside the village. Please show respect to him. As Iruka finished, he ushered Naruto in. Now standing at the front of the class, Naruto pulled his hood down. This action caused some girls to gasp at how handsome he looked, and the instant formation of a fan club. Bowing, Naruto introduced himself. Good morning everyone, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet you all. As he finished, a silence fell over the class. If one could listen closely enough, they would be able to hear a soft, troublesome, muttered by a certain Nara. Sasuke, deciding to make himself known as the superior, voiced his opinions. Dobi, what kind of loser clan did you come from? Naruto merely raised an eyebrow at his rudeness. Have you not heard of the Uzumaki clan? Naruto asked, wondering if they were teaching the proper history to the students. What kind of no-name clan is that? Sasuke asked again. His fangirls thought he was really cool for some reason. Naruto merely chuckled. The Uzumaki clan was a feared clan amongst all the shinobi nations. Then why haven't I heard of them? The Uchiha thought he had Naruto trapped now. Yet Naruto didn't seem fazed at all. A troublesome was heard again. Naruto decided to call out the Nara this time. Hey you, the Nara that keeps saying troublesome. Naruto called out. Shikamaru looked at Naruto and raised an eyebrow as if answering, yes? You seem to have heard of the Uzumaki clan. Care to explain to your ignorant classmates? Naruto jabbed at everyone who had looks of confusion. Shikamaru sighed. The Uzumaki clan was a clan feared by all before and especially after the First Shinobi World War. So much in fact that in the Second Shinobi World War, Iwa, Aim, and Suna decided than rather attack Konoha, they would first launch an allied strike against Uzushiogakure, the hidden village founded by the Uzumaki clan. That would eventually spell its demise, but even now, those who remember what happened in the Second War, and those who know enough about history know not to mess with an Uzumaki in any matter. Sasuke looked furious at the fact that this no-name clan had outshone the Uchiha name throughout history. But then he noticed Shikamaru didn't say anything about their abilities. Smirking, he decided he would find a weakness by the end of today. Oh, and what did they specialize in? Ninjutsu like the Uchiha? Taijutsu like the Hyuga? Maybe Genjutsu? Or even Kenjutsu? We all know that Gen-Tai and Kenjutsu are inferior in many ways to Ninjutsu. Sasuke smirked thinking he had won. While that may be true, the Uzumaki clan didn't specialize in any of those paths. They specialized in the art of Fuinjutsu. Shikamaru drawled out. Sasuke's smirk seemed to grow even wider. Fuinjutsu? What can they do with that? Seal their enemies away? Sasuke and his followers laughed. Naruto just stood there, eyebrows still raised, looking on in an amused fashion. He decided to cut in. While sealing scrolls may come in handy, that's not all seals can do. Naruto informed the class. Oh, and what else can seals do? Sasuke taunted. Oh, many things. In fact, if I wanted, I could make a seal right now that can suck the soul out of your body and store it into a seal for further usage. Naruto said in an all too cheery tone which creeped out the other students. Sasuke turned pale white. Iruka, deciding it was enough, started the test. Okay, that's enough. Pick a seat, Naruto-san, we'll be starting the test now. Iruka said. The written test was not too hard. A little bit on history and a lot on the sciences. Chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, and some situational problems that they may run into as ninja were tested upon. After the test was over, Iruka set about collecting the tests, while Mizuki went out to test the students on thrown weapons accuracy. As Iruka picked up Naruto's test, he was shocked that he got all answers correct. He also absently noted that Naruto's handwriting was very beautiful, likely from years of writing seals. While outside, Mizuki called the genin up one by one to throw their kunai and shuriken. Hyuga Hinata, please step up. The timid girl went up and took out 10 kunai. She threw them one at a time, 7 of which hit dead center, others were off by a few inches. 7 out of 10, not bad. Next, Shikamaru Nara, the lazy boy, got up, threw his kunai and got 6 out of 10. Akamichi, Choji, Mizuki called out. The plump boy got up and walked to the throwing line. Taking out his kunai, he threw them. Also a 7 out of 10. Next, Yamanaka Ino. Ino got up from Sasuke's left side and threw her kunai. 5 out of 10 hit dead center. Inazuka Kiba, the dog boy, stood up. He was energized as ever and ran to the throwing line. He took out 10 kunai and threw them all at once. 4 of them hit dead center. 6 of the 10 touched the target. Mizuki sighed, and this continued for a long time until Haruno Sakura, the pink-haired girl, got up. Her frail legs seemed to barely support her weight. As she took out her kunais, Ino was on the sidelines calling her names. She then got into position and threw them one by one, and got the same score Ino did. 5 out of 10. Naruto sighed. Disgrace to ninja everywhere and especially to Kunoichi. He thought as he shook his head. Uchiha Sasuke. Mizuki called out. Sasuke's fangirls squealed. Sasuke himself got up with an air of supreme confidence and arrogance. Just watch how an Uchiha does things, Dobi. Sasuke stated. Naruto only looked on in disinterest. Taking out 10 kunais, Sasuke launched them all at once and they all hit dead center. Sasuke, HMPH ed, as he walked past Naruto. And finally, Uzumaki Naruto. Mizuki said with a little too much malice in his voice. Naruto noticed this and decided to be wary around him. As Naruto took out 10 kunai, he coiled his muscles and got ready to throw. He released all 10 at once and they all hit dead center. A perfect score, Naruto smirked. Looks like I tied with you, Uchiha-san. Naruto stated. Sasuke was livid. How could someone come in and just steal his thunder like that? After the tests were over and scores were recorded, the students and Mizuki went to a training field with Iruka standing there waiting for them. Okay students, this is the taijutsu portion of the exam. We will be pitting you against each other. We will assess you on how you fight and your tactics during fighting. Winning and losing are only bonuses, understood? Iruka explained. Hi, everyone chorused. Okay then, first off. After many and interesting fights, it came down to the last two, Naruto and Sasuke. Last round, Uzumaki Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke. Iruka called out. The two walked into the ring drawn on the ground. Same rules, no jutsu or chakra. Pure taijutsu, got it? Understood, replied Naruto. Just get on with it, came from Sasuke. Iruka could only shake his head. Begin. As soon as that word was said, Naruto dropped into a very loose stance. It seemed to be full of openings, so Sasuke charged him. As he went in for the punch, Naruto leaned in, put his hands in front of Naruto's chest, made a grabbing motion and leaned back, pulling his hands back into his chest as if he was pulling Sasuke to the ground. Sasuke got confused by the motion and tripped over himself and fell. Naruto only chuckled. Too much for you, Sasuke-chan? Naruto taunted. Sasuke's anger flared. RAAAWR. Came a battle cry from Sasuke. He charged with a kunai in his hand. As he made a stabbing motion, Naruto stepped out of the way, grabbed his wrist and knocked the knife out with his other hand. He then proceeded to bend the arm in weird angles, causing Sasuke to twist and turn until he was on the ground with Naruto's heel hovering above his head. Sensei, if I stomp right now, his skull will be crushed and he will die. Please call the winner. Naruto calmly said to Iruka. Right, winner. Uzumaki Naruto. The other students stared at Naruto in awe. He just defeated the great Uchiha in single combat. Of course, the fangirls were calling for his blood, saying he cheated. As the class shuffled back into the classroom for the last portion of the exams, Sasuke lay there wondering how the blonde got so strong and how he would gain that power so he can kill his brother. In the classroom. Okay class, now we will commence the ninjutsu portion of the exams. Please get back into your seats while I call you up one by one to be tested. Iruka said. The students all sat back down, chatting with their friends. Naruto sat down beside Shikamaru, who started to drift off to sleep. Naruto sighed at the Nara's antics. Hey, my name's Naruto, what's yours? Naruto introduced. Shikamaru sighed, troublesome. Shikamaru. There was a pregnant pause. So, that seal that you said that can suck souls out. Is it real? Shikamaru asked, interested. Naruto only smirked, not as of yet, but I have an idea on it already. Rather than just sealing your soul, I could just seal your whole body, or I could create a seal that separates your chakra from your body, and seal your chakra away, effectively drawing your soul out with you. Shikamaru's eyes twitched. Though he didn't fully understand seals, he knew they were powerful, just not this powerful. Troublesome. Naruto only chuckled. As each student got called up one by one, many came out with their headbands and a few had come out crying. Naruto just sat in his seat, looking out the window, enjoying the sun. He was about to fall asleep when he heard his name called. Uzumaki Naruto, come in for your test. Mizuki grit his teeth, directing his hate and sake at Naruto. Naruto just shrugged it off and kept walking. As he entered the room, he saw Iruka behind a desk with a stack of papers beside him. Mizuki sat off to the side. Okay Naruto, would you please do a henge for us please? Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. The academy grades on such low-level jutsu? Shrugging, he performed the hand seals and poof. Henge no jutsu, Naruto said, barely above a whisper. He transformed his look into the Sandame. Iruka looked impressed, there didn't seem to be anything off about his henge. Mizuki looked a little angry. Next, please perform the Kawarimi please. Iruka said as he finished upgrading his henge and looked up. With the next few hand seals, another poof, and in his place was Mizuki's pants. Iruka looked over to his left, and sure enough, Mizuki was pantless and Naruto was standing behind him. Mizuki tried his best to cover up his red polka dot on white boxers. He scowled at Naruto, ran over to get his pants, and put them back on. Now Iruka was really impressed, but at the same time amused. Impressed at the fact that he could take off Mizuki's pants without the victim noticing, and amused that the rumors regarding that he was a master prankster came true. With a sigh, Iruka continued the test. Lastly, would you please perform the bunshin please? Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. A normal bunshin? Deciding to voice his thoughts. A normal bunshin? Naruto asked incredulously. Yes, without it you can't graduate. Iruka informed him. Why doesn't the academy teach something more useful? Like Mizu bunshin? Naruto asked. Iruka could only sigh. Because the students may not have enough chakra. Iruka replied. Naruto shrugged. Performing the hand seals, two perfect bunshins appeared beside him. Iruka inspected both bunshins and poked them. His hand went right through. Nodding, Iruka wrote down the marks on his paper. He took a black headband and handed it to Naruto. Congratulations Genin Uzumaki. Iruka smiled. Naruto reached out with both his hands and accepted the headband with a bow. Thank you Iruka-sensei. Naruto tied the headband over his forehead, lifting the blonde tufts of hair that covered his face. With a grin Naruto walked out behind Iruka, with Mizuki scowling at Naruto behind his back. Congratulations to those that passed, and for those that didn't, there's always next year. Now, please come back on Monday to find out who your teammates are and who your sensei is. Dismissed. With that, Iruka walked out the classroom with an angry Mizuki in tow. Naruto got up from his seat and walked away. Gotta get some ramen, then talk to the old man about my trip. Walking through the streets of Konoha, Naruto took in his surroundings and compared them to what he remembered from a decade ago. Many new buildings and shops were built on top of the land of where old ones lay. Glancing around, he noticed that many of the civilian population were staring at him. His hooded face apparently scared many of the civilians away. Smirking, he picked up his pace towards the Hokage Tower. Hokage Tower. Office. Gently rapping at the door 3 times before walking in, he was greeted by the sight of Sarutobi Hiruzen, the shinobi no kami, the most feared shinobi during the Third Ninja War, giggling and completely off guard. On his desk was a modified crystal ball. With help from Jiraiya, the crystal ball was connected to a hidden camera in the women's side of the hot springs. Naruto twitched at the sight of the Hokage peeping. Deciding to make his presence known, he cleared his throat. Ahem, huh? Sarutobi quickly looked up, then looked back down, going into shock for a second before frantically opening his desk drawer and almost throwing the crystal ball in, slamming it shut. Sorry about that. How can I help you Naruto-kun? Naruto raised an eyebrow. Other than stop being a pervert and peeping on naked chicks? Sarutobi looked sheepish. Naruto shook his head and sighed. Well, you told me to come here after the exams, so here I am. Sarutobi nodded. Well, let's start from the beginning. What did you learn with Hisashi-sama? For 7 years I trained with him. Well, not trained, more like learned the art of sealing from him. Pretty much from theory to learning how to draw seals correctly, and then applying what I knew. After the 5th year, I had learned what I could. The last 2 years was more of a research period for seals I had in my head and learning how to incorporate seals into fighting. Naruto explained. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at the last one, as if sensing his confusion. Naruto explained further. Sometimes in a battle, you may either run out of seals that you prepared, or you simply didn't prepare the needed seal, so you would then make the seal on the spot, and while it will leave you open if you stay in one place and draw, your drawing speed makes all the difference. That and the fact that I also had to learn how to draw seals while engaging enemies. Sarutobi nodded in understanding, It seemed logical that a clan based on Fuinjutsu would be able to develop a style of drawing seals on the fly. Great, now I need to know something else. Sarutobi paused. Naruto gestured with his hand for him to continue. Two things actually. First, that you said you can create a seal that can suck the soul out of someone? What are the repercussions of using such a seal? Naruto smiled a little. Well, that seal has no repercussions like the dead demon-consuming seal, meaning no lives sacrificed. Although it sounds great and all, it requires contact between the target and the user. If the contact is broken, only a part of their chakra is sealed away, not the soul. The premise of the seal is that you need chakra to live, so therefore your chakra is also somehow attached to your soul, as seen with the dead demon-consuming seal and how my father sealed Kyuubi. How this seal works is that it completely drains all chakra from the target and in turn their soul would follow. However, a major flaw is that you are completely open while drawing the chakra from the target, having to constantly be in contact with the person. The only practical use would be to interrogate those that won't talk, by taking their souls into my own body and sifting through all the information it contains, then destroying what you don't need. Even the Yamanaka mind jutsus are more efficient than this, so it has no practical use, though it makes a great deterrent and fear factor. Sarutobi sighed in both relief and disappointment. He didn't want a technique like this uncontrolled, yet at the same time, it was similar to the dead demon-consuming seal, but did not require any lives. Well, lives on the user's side. My second question is from what I observed through my crystal ball during your examinations. With the Kyuubi inside you, your large chakra should be incredibly hard to control. How is it that you can use techniques that require a small percentile of your chakra? Even with perfect control, if a person has large reserves like you, the chakra charged into the bunshin would make it unstable, and therefore fail. Sarutobi looked expectantly at Naruto, hoping to find out what he did. Naruto only chuckled. That, Gigi, is the result of one of my best and favorite seal, it's also my little secret. Sarutobi deflated a little, but wondered what kind of seal would be able to do such a thing. Haha, don't look too down, I'll tell you since you're the Hokage. Sarutobi perked up at this. Firstly, the seal is a byproduct of many other experiments that I undertook. First was somewhat of a chakra stabilization seal, if you will. When a person performs a jutsu, they gather the chakra at the needed tenketsus and push out, thus forcing the chakra out. However, by flashing your chakra like this, it's just not great for stealth. Of course, the other way would be to just not use any jutsu, but in case you're on a stealth mission, and you needed to use jutsu but you didn't want any of the explosive energy being broadcasted, this seal would take a portion of your chakra, and supplies a constant stream for the jutsu needed. When the technique performed is somewhat explosive, say a grand fireball, it would take the chakra as needed and convert it into fire, leaving no chakra residue in the air or any of it being broadcasted. The second seal was from examples taken from root operatives in Konoha. By just talking about root, the seal would activate and the ninja would be incapacitated. So I set out my research to find a seal that can link to your mind. After many months of theory and a birthday present from dear old dad, I had found a way to give mental commands to my body indirectly through the seal. Sarutobi decided to interrupt. Wait, that present from your dad, what did it say? I'll tell you later. Moving on, I have personally assigned units to chakra. By defining what one unit of chakra can do, I can assign the relative units of chakra needed for a technique. By using these units with my mind seal, combined with a modified version of the stabilization seal, I am able to have, quite literally, perfect chakra control. Sarutobi's jaws dropped. True perfect chakra control? Imagine the possibilities. Wow. Naruto smiled. Yep. That's that. So you want to know what I got from my father? Sarutobi nodded. Okay, it's a scroll of theories developed by him from observing Jiraiya in sage mode. He theorized that the chakra obtained from nature is much purer than the chakra that humans produce, and because of this purer substance, it greatly enhances speed and strength because during sage mode, chakra usage never stops, therefore it keeps enhancing all those qualities until all of it is used up. At the time, I didn't have Jiraiya in front of me, nor did I have the opportunity to undergo sage training, so I had to make do. The answer came to me during my travels, specifically to the fire temple. Their monks there meditated every day, and although they didn't know it, they were unconsciously purifying their chakra, allowing them to use their special chakra. After some experimenting, I found that purifying chakra could be obtained through the help of a certain breathing technique that circulates the chakra through your system while taking the waste out through the respiratory system as CO2. After much practice with this technique, I can confidently say that my chakra is pure, as in 100% pure. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow, skeptical of the outcomes of purified chakra versus a mass amount of chakra. While quality does usually triumph over quantity, the more chakra you push into a jutsu like the Grand Fireball, the more powerful it would be, wouldn't it? Forgive me if I'm doubtful, but wouldn't say, 10 times the amount of unpure chakra used overpower the refined chakra? See, that's where you're wrong. The average shinobi's chakra is approximately 40% pure with cages and higher-level junins with 55 to 65%. Sages like Jiraiya would be around 70% pure chakra, with the rest being rubbish. Also, take into account that nature chakra isn't 100% pure, it is only about 80%. Jiraiya, a sage, with nature chakra, has an average purity of around 75%. That 5% increase in chakra concentration allows for massive increase in strength and speed. The actual power of a technique is the energy used multiplied by the percentage squared. Sarutobi did the math in his head, and his eyes widened. The energy output would be massive, especially considering the amount of chakra Naruto has. Naruto looked at Sarutobi, letting the information sink in. That's unbelievable, Sarutobi said, finally breaking out of his trance. I know, but it's all real. Naruto calmly answered. Sarutobi sighed, deciding to carry on with the meeting. So can you tell me what you learned on your travels? Naruto nodded. Getting into a comfortable position on the couch, he began to tell him of what happened. Flashback 3 years ago. Whistling a little tune as he walked, Naruto raised an eyebrow at the well-hidden presences in the forest off the side of the road. Shrugging, he kept walking down the road until something exploded out of the bushes and onto the road. As the figure got onto the road, he stopped moving immediately, as if frozen on the spot. A second after this happened, 2 more figures jumped on the road but got frozen as well. Naruto smirked. Well, what do we have here? Naruto said as he walked towards the 3 figures stuck in a pose like a figurine. Looking the 3 people over, Naruto's grin got even wider. So we have 2 ex-swordsmen of the mist, Naruto said, taking notice of their headband, and 1 defective hunter nin? Naruto looked a bit puzzled at the hunter nin. Growling came from the blue-skinned shinobi known as Kisame. Hoshigaki Kisame, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, how are you today? Let me go Gaki, Kisame yelled at Naruto. The other nuke nin sighed. Baka, he in a position to end our lives, don't you think you should treat him a bit better? Turning towards Naruto, Zabuza asked another question, Oi, what did you do to us? Why can't we move? Naruto smiled. The reason you can't move is because of a few seals I applied in this area. What do you mean? We didn't see you apply any seals. Kisame yelled. Correct, you didn't see me apply any seals. The 3 figures looked at Naruto as if he was stupid, and that's why I win. I'm by winning, sorry, had to do that. If the 3 nin could face fault, they would have. The hunter nin turned his head slightly towards Zabuza. I think he's crazy, he whispered. Yeah, I agree completely. Zabuza nodded. Naruto noticed the 2 talking and Kisame squirming, trying to get free. Coming up with a plan, he smirked. This is perfect, Naruto yelled, making the 3 look at him with raised eyebrows. I have a plan. Do you want to hear it? Naruto asked them with a big grin on his face. Zabuza was a bit cautious. What if we don't want to hear it? He eyed Naruto. Then I kill you right here right now. Naruto answered all too happily. I think we'll listen to your plan. Kisame decided for the group, opting for the route with a higher chance of survivability. Great, Naruto jumped in joy. Here's my plan, you two, he said pointing to Zabuza and Kisame, will teach me everything you know about Kenjutsu and I learn. Zabuza and Kisame looked at each other. What do we get out of this? Zabuza asked. You get to live a while longer, and maybe I won't kill you when my training is over. Naruto said still too happily. This made the 2 nin really sweat. Kisame looked to Zabuza for help. Zabuza only shook his head. Kisame sighed, we'll help you brat. Great. Tilde 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 flashback end tilde 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 tilde. And I trained with them for about 2 years or so. Naruto said as he finished his story. Sarutobi blinked a few times. You threatened 2 of the more powerful swordsmen and lived? Naruto nodded. Sarutobi then sighed. I'm getting too old for this. Anyways, anything else other than meeting the Kyuubi that I need to know about? Naruto thought for a second. Not really, no. The meeting with the Kyuubi was pretty uneventful. Only thing I learned was that the Kyuubi in both attacks against Konoha was forced to, under the control of an Uchiha. More specifically Madara if my assumptions are correct. Sarutobi paled at this information, going into a semi-shocked state. He sighed, a bit depressed knowing that Konoha and the rest of the shinobi nations would be in conflict again sometime in the future. That's all for today Naruto, thank you. No problem Gigi. Naruto grinned, Sarutobi groaned. Anyways, while you were at the academy, I have arranged a small house for you to live in. Sarutobi informed him while opening the top drawer to his desk. Grabbing the keys, he tossed it to Naruto. Snatching the keys out of the air, Naruto grinned. Thanks old man. Oh, and if you're ever looking for me, you would have better luck finding me in the forest of death than my home. So try the forest before my home alright? Later, Naruto said. Sarutobi shook his head in amusement, taking his pipe and lighting it, just like his personality, always looking for a thrill. Someday the animals will get you Naruto, just watch out. That an Ankh? Sarutobi's eyes widened, pipe falling out of his hand. He had forgotten about Anko and her favorite place of dwelling. Contemplating about whether to warn Naruto about or not, he shrugged, picking up his pipe and lighting it again. He would be okay, right? Forest of Death. After dropping his things off at home, Naruto decided to take a stroll and maybe a nap in the forest. Walking up to the large gates, he saw the many signs that read, danger, and, forbidden, all over the fence surrounding the forest. A Cheshire grin came upon his face, this is my kind of forest. He sated as he jumped over the gate and landed on the other side. Walking deeper into the forest, he noticed a presence watching him but paid no mind to it, most likely a large animal that this forest is famous for. Forest of Death. As many people know, walking through the forest can be a very soothing process. However, what about walking through a forest full of oversized carnivorous beasts, ready to devour anything in their sights? Not so pleasant, but that's not so for one Uzumaki Naruto, now walking through one of the deadliest natural forests in all the shinobi nations. What was weird was the fact that Naruto could walk past such beasts, right in front of their eyes, and not be attacked at all. It was as if the beasts could not see him. Which was true in a way. Walking into a clearing, Naruto looked around. Finding a tree that looked comfortable enough, he jumped up to the tree and lay down, preparing to take a nap. That is, until a kunai, sailing through the air, interrupted his nap time. Raising his hand and hooking his middle finger into the rain, he flung it back in the direction it came. Slowly getting up, Naruto pulled out a blank mask and put it on. I guess the presence I felt when coming into the forest was you, wasn't it? I must commend you at keeping your intentions hidden. Had I not went against my senses you would be, for all intents and purposes, dead. A silence filled the air. Naruto stood there, waiting for a few minutes. Suddenly whipping his body around, his hand shot up and blocked a strike from his assailant. Grabbing the arm, he twisted the elbow up while holding the wrist down, causing the arm to twist in an unnatural position, holding the rest of the body down, keeping it immobile. The attacker growled, for being subdued so easily. Naruto closely inspected his assailant. Purple hair tied into a knot at the end, sticking up, trench coat, mesh shirt and leggings, orange miniskirt. Noticing the Konoha headband, he let go. Growling, the kunoichi jumped back a few meters away from Naruto. Good evening, Naruto said, taking a bow. The kunoichi, Anko if you guys don't already know. Taking notice of his deep voice, trying to match it to any people she knew. It didn't. Who are you? Naruto raised an eyebrow behind his mask. His black cloak covered everything except his white mask. The shadows of the trees seemed to envelop him, the darkness covering his very being. It seemed as if the kunoichi was talking to a floating mask. Who is but the form following the function of what, and what I am is a man in a mask. Naruto answered, deciding to play with his assailant. I can see that. She was getting impatient. I know you can. I'm not questioning your powers of observation. I'm merely remarking upon the paradox of asking a masked man who he is. Naruto answered back. The kunoichi only sweat dropped. Anyways, I am the Kyuubi no Yoko. And he started cackling madly. She started twitching until she finally blew up and charged at Naruto again. Laughing, Naruto expertly dodged and weaved around her strikes, not attempting retaliate at all. After almost half a day of dodging the kunoichi's strikes, she finally stopped to catch her breath. Her sweat glistening in the moonlight, Naruto took in her appearance and was entranced. Not bad, though the clothes don't leave much to imagination. Shaking his head clear of his thoughts, which were obviously going down the wrong path, he focused on the kunoichi. Are you done yet? Maybe we could properly introduce ourselves now? Naruto politely asked her. Grr, take off that mask. She yelled at him. Thinking it over, oh alright. Raising his hand to his face, he grasped his mask. In one swift motion, he took it off, only to reveal another mask underneath. XD love masks and the wonders of them. Screaming in frustration, Anko, I will refer to her as this from now on, shot forward and tackled him, surprised that he didn't make any attempts at dodging. Sitting up, Anko held Naruto down and ripped the mask off and flipped the hood back. She was not, however, prepared for what met her eyes. A young blonde male, very handsome in her eyes, with a blush on his cheeks, arms covering his chests like a female would cover theirs. Yeah, Naruto yelled, shaking. You beast. Please be gentle. Anko really blew up this time. Throwing away the mask, she proceeded to choke him to death while shaking him. Like Homer choking Bart. Laughing a bit, while choking, Naruto grabbed both wrists and flipped them over so he was on top, straddling her, holding her arms above her head. Anko started kicking and screaming obscenities at Naruto. Chuckling a little, Naruto decided to give a real introduction this time. Let's try this again, shall we? Anko stopped struggling, though Naruto still didn't get off. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, pleased to meet you. Might I be honored to get the name of the lady beneath me? Huffing, Anko replied, Mitarashi Anko, I help with the torture and interrogation within the leaf. Yes, of course. Might I ask as to why you attacked me? You were trespassing on my territory. Anko replied, defiantly. Your territory? I don't recall the forest or any training grounds belonging to one person. The village operates and controls training grounds 44, does it not? Anko nodded. Then why do you claim that it is your territory? I spend all my time here. It's one of those things that everyone just accepts and everyone knows about it. Anko replied. Ah, of course. Noticing their position, Naruto decided to get up. Sorry about holding you down for so long, you must be uncomfortable. Allow me. Naruto stooped up and helped Anko up, patting the dirt off the back of her trench coat. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mitarashi-san, Naruto said, taking a deep bow. I bid you good night and adieu. With that, Naruto disappeared into the night, leaving a confused Anko standing in the middle of the forest. What does adieu mean? Thinking over, she just shrugged and decided to go back home and sleep on this interesting new character that appeared in the leaf. Monday. Academy. Naruto walked down the hallways of the academy, listening to the chatter of all the classrooms. Too many genin. Most of them are going to die. He looked at many of the new genin sadly, wondering if any of them knew what being a ninja truly meant. Walking into his classroom, he looked around and saw that everybody was present except for Mizuki. Wonder what happened to him. Oh well. Naruto walked up the stairs and sat beside Shikamaru. Greeting each other with a nod, Naruto sat down and Shikamaru lay his head down on his desk again. Congratulations, genin. Today, you are to be assigned 2 teammates and a Junin sensei. First, Team 1. And so the teams started getting called out while Naruto also lay his head down. Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke. Many of the girls perked up at this, hoping that their name would be called. Haruno Sakura. Sakura jumped in joy and gloated over all the other girls. And, he paused, building up suspense. Many of the fangirls leaning forward hoping that their name was to be called. Uzumaki Naruto. As soon as the name was said, a silence fell upon the classroom. Almost everyone turned their head to the back to look at said blonde who was seemingly asleep. Continuing with the teams, Iruka called out the rest of the teams. Team 8, Inazuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata, and Aburame Shino. Team 9 is still in circulation under Junin Maeda Gai. Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji. And he went on to finish the rest of the teams. Your Junin sensei will be here shortly to pick you up. Please wait patiently. And with that, Iruka left. A few minutes later, a kunoichi with waist-length shaggy black hair appeared at the door. Team 8, come with me. The members of Team 8 stood up and walked to the door. Then, a bearded man with a smoke in his mouth walked in. Team 10, come with me. And they followed. Slowly, all the teams were called and led out, that is all except Team 7. Sitting there waiting for almost half an hour, Sakura started to get agitated, her patience wearing thin. Damn it, where is HE? She yelled out in frustration. Sasuke did not even pay attention and kept staring out the window. Naruto had woken from his nap and started meditating. 2.5 hours later, the door opened and a silver-haired Junin poked his head in. Sakura and Sasuke turned to look at the man. Naruto just opened an eye to look at the man. Team 7? Sakura nodded in confirmation. Meet at the rooftops in 5 minutes. If any of you are missing or late, I won't be teaching this team. With that, he disappeared with a poof. Sakura and Sasuke quickly ran out the door in hopes to reach the rooftop before the time was up, forgetting about their blonde teammate. Rooftop. Kakashi was reading his book peacefully, though in his mind, he was wondering how his students took to waiting for him for 3 hours. It'll be fine. So Hitaki-san, care to tell me why you were late? A voice said to his side. Surprised and caught off guard, he turned to look at his student. How did he get up here without me noticing? Kakashi sighed, knowing that this team would be a real challenge, if they passed the bell test. How did you get here so fast? The average genin can't really climb walls or jump this high. Yes, well, I'm not your average genin. Naruto answered calmly, walking to the railings and leaning on it. I can see that. Few Junin could fool my sensed, much less genin, which begs the question, who are you really? Kakashi eyed Naruto, hoping that he would give an answer. Naruto looked a bit puzzled. Didn't the old man tell you who your students were? The old man? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. The Hokage. Naruto replied. Kakashi's eyes widened in shock then narrowed. You had better show some respect to Hokage-sama, genin. Kakashi said dangerously, stressing the last word, genin. Naruto smirked. Well, if you knew the old man on a personal level, to the point that he is your grandfather, then it doesn't matter now, does it? Kakashi seemed to buy that answer, for now. Now, again, why don't you know your students' names? Oh, that, I didn't bother asking. Kakashi replied. Back to the original question then, who are you? Naruto chuckled. You'll find out when we do the introductions. Here they come. Kakashi looked up from his book, and surely enough, there stood the rest of his team. Sakura was breathing hard from running up the few flights of stairs, whereas Sasuke slightly winded because of his better physical conditioning. How did you get here before me and Sasuke-kun? Sakura pointed an accusing finger at Naruto. He shrugged. I walked. Kakashi's eyes smiled at the answer. Now, all of you sit down. Kakashi said, pointing at some steps. Sakura and Sasuke sat down on them while Naruto stayed by the railing, leaning over and looking at the pedestrians below. Let's begin with an introduction. I'll start to give you guys an idea of what to do. Kakashi said, clearing his throat. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. My likes are none of your business. My dislikes, you don't need to know. My hobbies, maybe I'll tell you when you're a bit older. My dreams, well, you guys are too young to understand. Kakashi finished with a little giggle. Naruto chuckled along with him. Sakura and Sasuke, however, looked incredulously at their teacher. He told them nothing. You next, girl with the bright pink hair. Sakura seemed a bit perturbed the name but continued anyways. My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes include, looks at Sasuke. My hobbies are, looks at Sasuke. My dream is to, fuck Sasuke unconscious, looks at Sasuke. And my dislikes are Ino pig. You next, duck butt. Kakashi pointed to Sasuke. Growling a bit, Sasuke answered. Uchiha Sasuke, not many likes, many dislikes. No dream, only an ambition to kill a certain man. Kakashi inwardly sighed. Great, an avenger and a fangirl. Let's hope this last guy is at least sane. Kakashi pointed at Naruto, indicating that he wanted him to speak. Naruto gained a smirk on his face. Yes, he would play with them. He pulled his mask out and put it on. Voila! He yelled, scaring the shit out of the onlookers. In view, a humble vaudevillian veteran, cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate. This visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi, now vacant, vanished. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified, and has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin van-guarding vice and vouchsafing the violently vicious voracious violation of volition. Turning abruptly, he pulled out a kunai and slashed a wall, forming a V. Calming down a bit, he continued. The only verdict is vengeance. A vendetta, held as a votive, not in vain, for the value and veracity of such shall one day vindicate the vigilant and the virtuous. Bringing his hands together, Naruto chuckled madly. Verily this vichyssoise of verbiage veers most verbose, so let me simply add that it's my very good honor to meet you and you may call me V. The three nin looked at him like he was crazy. Kakashi had dropped his book, while Sasuke and Sakura had dropped their jaws. He is crazy. Naruto chuckled a little. Just kidding, and the three nin face faulted. Anyways, let me properly introduce myself. With that, he took his mask off and then took his hood off. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Kakashi's eyes widened in shock. My likes include fuinjutsu, the forest of death, and various amounts of food such as ramen and dango. Kakashi started to sweat a little at this. He was a bit too much like Anko to be safe. My dislikes. Well, there are many dislikes and let's just leave it at that. My hobbies include taking strolls and naps in the forest of death. Yep, too much like Anko. Kakashi thought. A dream for the future would be to make the Uzumaki clan name both respected and feared across the shinobi nations. He finished with a smile. How was that for an introduction, Inu-san? He said to Kakashi. Kakashi was shocked. How did you know? How would I not recognize that silver hair? Kakashi rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. Sakura decided to interject. Wait, how do you know Kakashi-sensei? She asked Naruto. Before I left, Kakashi here was still in Anbu. I would bother him all day long until he played with me. Naruto said a little smugly. Oi, don't just go telling everyone that I used to be in Anbu. Kakashi smacked Naruto, getting a loud yelp from him. Naruto grumbled a bit. Turning towards the other students, he dismissed them with a few parting words. Show up tomorrow for training. 6 o'clock sharp. I suggest you don't eat in case you puke. With that, the two other nin left. Turning to his younger brother and all but blood, they started talking about the adventures that Naruto had in the past few years. Few hours later, you know that the team will not work out, right? Naruto informed Kakashi, who only raised an eyebrow. And why do you think that? Kakashi asked. The Uchiha's arrogance and pride will not allow him to work with others. Haruno-san also follows his every whim, and with the Uchiha already having a dislike of me. Well, you get the picture. Kakashi nodded in acceptance. We will have to see. If all else fails, then we would have to get you transferred off the team. Naruto chuckled, trying to get rid of me already, Ma, I doubt I could teach you anything useful anyways. If what you said is true about surpassing your grandfather, then all that's keeping from being a cage is experience. Kakashi tried to placate Naruto, lest he be angry with him after meeting for the first time in over 10 years. Well, being transferred off is only something I can hope for. Naruto said, shrugging a bit. Nay Kakashi. Yes, Naruto-kun? Do you know of a kunoichi who goes by the name of Mitarashi Anko? She works in the torture and interrogation department of Anbu. Kakashi started to sweat a little. Yes, I know her. Why? Kakashi asked, a little scared of the reply. Well, I think she would be a pretty interesting sensei, wouldn't you agree? Naruto turned to Kakashi, expecting an answer. I think that's a bad idea. How do you know her anyways? Naruto smirked. I have my ways. I'll see you tomorrow morning. With that, he pulled his hood on and walked off into the night, completely blending in with the shadows. Kakashi shivered. It's creepy how he does that. Putting his hands into a seal, he disappeared with a poof. Next day, Training Grounds 7. The three genin sat in various places in the training grounds. Sasuke and Sakura sat under different trees, while Naruto was lying down in a tree, sleeping. The three were waiting for their sensei who, of course, would be 3 hours late. 3 hours later, Naruto was still sleeping, though he woke up when he felt the chakra signature of Kakashi in the area. The other two genin, however, were completely oblivious as they were too tired and hungry, trying only to stay awake. And with a poof, yo, Kakashi appeared in the clearing, scaring the two genin that did not sense him. "You're late," came from Sakura, pointing an accusing finger at Kakashi who only took up a thoughtful pose. I said for you to be here at 6 in the morning, not me. So therefore, I'm not late," he said cheerily. Sasuke could only try and glare his sensei to death. Kakashi I smiled. "Well, now that we're all here we can," only to be cut off by Sakura. "Sensei, Uzumaki-san is still missing," Sakura pointed out. No sooner had she said that, Naruto landed beside her. "I'm here," short and concise. Kakashi mused. "Yes, well now that we're all here, we can begin with the test." At this Sasuke's and Sakura's head snapped up so fast. Naruto was not as shocked, as he had expected something like this. "What do you mean, test?" Sasuke said, finally deciding to voice his thoughts. "You know that test that you took at the academy? Well, it was garbage, it was only theory. This test is to see if you have what it takes practically to function efficiently in the field, weeding out the weak so we don't have to drag your dead bodies back." Kakashi answered nonchalantly. Sakura was a bit troubled, knowing that her physical prowess was lacking. Sasuke was feeling a bit more confident, though he was still unsure of what this test is going to be. Probably just a ninjutsu or possibly a taijutsu test. Naruto stayed silent throughout. "Well, you guys have till noon." Kakashi paused here to pull out an alarm clock. "In order to get these 2 bells, taking out 2 bells and shaking it a bit. From my waist," he said, tying it to his waist. "The person who does not get a bell is failed and is sent back for remedial training," he said seriously. "Begin." With that all 3 genin disappeared, observing the Junin. Naruto sought out Sasuke's signature and went towards him. "Oi, Sasuke!" Naruto yelled. "You know what I mean." Sasuke turned around and saw Naruto crouched behind him. "Want some help taking him down?" Naruto hoped he would say yes. "No, go away. I can get a bell by myself." Naruto sighed and jumped off in another direction. "Oi, Sakura!" Sakura whipped around looking for the voice that called out towards her. "Who's there? Is that you, Uzumaki-san?" Sakura asked. Naruto jumped down from a tree and landed in front of her. "Yeah, it's me. Want to work together and get a bell?" Naruto, again, hoped that a yes would be the answer, and again. "No. If you get a bell, then I can't be with Sasuke-kun anymore. Stop bothering me now." And with that, Naruto jumped off again. After half an hour, Naruto decided that he would confront the Junin by himself after seeing Sakura being taken down by a low-ranked genjutsu and Sasuke buried up to his neck by a slightly higher-level ninjutsu. Landing in front of Kakashi, he pulled out his mask and put it on. Kakashi looked up from his book and I smiled. "I was wondering when you would come out. I'm guessing that teamwork failed?" "Yep, but that's not keeping me from fighting you. I want to know where I stand in the food chain," Naruto said with a smirk. "Be careful what you wish for, Naruto-kun," Kakashi said, stowing his erotica away and falling into a basic taijutsu stance. Naruto grinned. Naruto rushed up to Kakashi and threw a punch, though that got dodged. As expected of a Junin. Following up with a high kick, and then flowing into a low sweep, Kakashi ducked and jumped over the kick and sweep. Pulling out a few shuriken, Kakashi flung them at Naruto, who took out his own shuriken and deflected them in mid-flight. Naruto pulled out a kunai and started slashing away at Kakashi. "Shit, he's fast," Kakashi thought. "I might even have to pull out the Sharingan early." Kakashi reached up to his headband, but before he could pull it back, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and, poof, another Naruto appeared behind Kakashi, looped their arms together and interlaced his fingers behind Kakashi's head. Kakashi's eyes widened at the trouble as soon as he saw the clone. Naruto came running, kunai in hand, and stabbed Kakashi in the abdomen, which only caused him to poof. Shit, couldn't get him before he switched. Naruto and his clone both looked around for any signs of the Junin. Meanwhile in the bushes, Kakashi was hiding, contemplating on what had happened. His Sharingan eye revealed and observing Naruto's actions. He sighed inwardly, wondering how strong the kid had grown. Naruto seemed to be waiting for Kakashi to come out, but one of his hands was in his coat, preparing exploding tags. He turned to his clone and nodded. They both jumped into the trees, planting tags on almost every other tree. I hope Gigi won't mind me blowing up half the training ground. Creating 3 more clones, he sent them to put up perimeter seals to contain the explosion. Back in the clearing of the training grounds, Naruto reappeared and started pacing around, waiting for the clones to dispel. Once they did, Naruto spoke up. Kakashi-san, if you won't come out, I'm going to have to smoke you out. Naruto yelled. In the bushes, Kakashi was a bit scared at what Naruto would do. Still won't come out? Oh well, don't say that I didn't warn you. With that, he put his hands together and sent out a small pulse of chakra, barely noticeable, activating the 100 or so tags in the forest. The explosion, quite literally, both smoked and blew Kakashi out of his hiding place and in front of Naruto, although a bit charred and covered in soot. Standing up, Kakashi coughed and dusted himself off, trying to get rid of the soot that covered him. How many tags did you even put up? Kakashi said, still coughing a bit. Naruto only grinned victoriously. I put up 100 tags or so. All spread out around the forest through cage buncheons. I figured if you were going to keep hiding, and I wasn't about to go into the forest in search of you and risk an ambush, I might as well force you out. And well, here you are. Kakashi sighed, looks like I had to go serious on a genin. Naruto's grin only got wider, though nobody could see under that mask. Kakashi dashed at Naruto at a top speed, pulling out a kunai. He made several slashes, many of which came close to drawing blood. Damn, guess you're not Junin for nothing. Naruto commented on Kakashi's speed while ducking under another slash. The one thing Kakashi did not notice was that Naruto was dragging his feet on the ground, making indentations of all shapes and sizes on the ground. After a few minutes, Naruto quickly jumped back from Kakashi, who had stopped his offense, waiting for Naruto to make a move. Naruto smirked. Kakashi-san, this is your first big mistake. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Naruto pointed down, and he looked down. He saw lines in the ground, intricate lines all leading to the center, where he was standing. Taking a step back, he saw the kanji, bakuhatsu, in the circle on the ground. His eyes widened. A giant explosive tag made from the ground? Shit! Kakashi yelled as Naruto activated the giant exploding tag. Kakashi quickly formed hand seals for a kawarimi, but was a little too late. He was already partially caught in the explosion. When the smoke cleared, Kakashi was standing there, many parts of his uniform destroyed. He was also bleeding from cuts all over his body, though none were lethal. Coughing, that could have killed me. Kakashi half yelled at Naruto. Be glad that you weren't an enemy, otherwise I wouldn't have given you the time to kawarimi. Naruto said calmly, and then he smiled. Anyways, you should give up. I've won already. Kakashi tilted his head a bit in confusion. What do you mean you've won? It's only started. Well, first of all, you are tired and already wounded, whereas I am only slightly winded from our exchange earlier. Drawing this fight out any longer would cost you more than a few cuts and bruises. Secondly, Naruto started forming hand seals. Ninpo. Kakusu Kekai no Jutsu. A barrier in the form of a pyramid rose up around Kakashi and met at a point at the top. This is a personal jutsu of mine used to trap enemies who are already weakened. Naruto chuckled a little. Even though I say weakened, it can still withstand quite a lot of power. Care to test it out? You win. Kakashi sighed as the barrier deactivated. Beaten by a genin not even a week old, how very very sad. Kakashi said as he shook his head, disappointed in himself. Naruto laughed at Kakashi's expense. Don't fret it. I am a very well-trained genin, trained by one of the most powerful men in the world, in the most powerful art in the world. So don't feel too bad about it. Naruto said, trying to comfort his friend. Kakashi sighed again. Yeah, anyways I'm going to go and report to the Hokage. From what I could see, this team definitely is not going to work. I'll see what I can do to get you on another team or maybe even an apprenticeship to another Junin. Too bad I'm gonna be stuck teaching those two, otherwise the council will get real pissy. He said, jabbing his thumb in the direction of a passed-out Sakura and an unconscious Sasuke, still buried and now knocked out from the shockwaves of the multiple explosions. I thought the council had been taken care of? Naruto said, confused. Yeah, they have, but not before they sank their fangs into the last Uchiha, making sure that he was made a shinobi and put on my team because I have a Sharingan. Anyways, gotta go. See ya. Poof. He was gone. Naruto sighed and decided to head home, leaving his two unconscious teammates in the clearing. Hokage's office. Clearing his throat, Hiruzen Sarutobi called all his ninja to attention. Report. Which teams passed and which failed. Each Junin lined up and got ready to report their teams. Team 1 failed. Team 2 failed. Team 3 failed. 4 failed. Team 5 failed. Team 6 failed. Kakashi looked up from his book. Team 7. Everyone was expecting a fail, knowing his record. Pass, though very barely. People looked surprised. If you would permit, Hokage-sama, I would like to make my report after everyone has gone. Sarutobi nodded. Kurenai stepped up. Team 8 passed. They have shown the necessary qualities of a team. Kiba is too headstrong though, and Hinata is too shy. Shino is, well, too quiet. Though, I believe with a bit of practice, they could make a reconnaissance or support team. Asuma then stepped up, seeing that Kurenai was finished. Team 10 passed. The Nara kid is too lazy, though Yamanaka Ino seems to keep him and Akamichi Choji motivated and in line. And on went the rest of the teams who all failed. Finally, when it all finished, Sarutobi looked to Kakashi for his report. Kakashi stepped forward. Hokage-sama, Team 7 is an utter failure of a team. The only reason it passed is because of two reasons. First, the council would have a bitch fit if I did not pass the last Uchiha, and second, a fresh out of the academy genin beat me in single combat. Kakashi shocked his audience saying that, though many were skeptical. Surely the Uchiha isn't that strong, Kakashi-san. A random Junin called out. No, he isn't. The Uchiha wasn't the one that beat me. Now all the Junin were interested in this mystery student they have not heard about. Kakashi looked to the Hokage. I'm sure that you, Hokage-sama, saw the fight? Sarutobi nodded, getting the hint, and pulled out his crystal orb. Running through many hand seals, he projected the image for all to see. The fight was less than spectacular for Kakashi. The boy's cleverness and ingenuity had been 2 steps ahead of Kakashi. All of the Junin stood there shocked. Kakashi was embarrassed that he was beaten by a genin and was rubbing the back of his neck. Kakashi chuckled nervously. As you can see, he is well above the skill level of genin, so I recommend that he be given a field test and promotion to chunin. If not, then at least a change of teachers because I am stuck with the Uchiha, so just get another student to fill in for him on my team while he is under the tutelage, or possibly apprenticeship, of another teacher. Kakashi finished with a determined tone. Sarutobi sat there, puffing on his pipe, thinking about the options. The team, obviously, was going to fail. Looking up, a boar-masked Anbu dropped down. Get Uzumaki-kun here please. I would like his input on some of this. The Anbu bowed and quickly left to retrieve Naruto. After a few minutes, Boar and Naruto reappeared in the room with a poof. You needed me, Hokage-sama? Naruto said with a bow, remembering to show respect in front of others. Yes, Kakashi-san here has informed me of your skills, and I have seen them as well. Your skill is well above the genin level and Kakashi has recommended a field test in order to promote you to chunin. Sarutobi informed Naruto, who looked a bit happy at this information. However, his happiness rating dropped. You are still somewhat inexperienced in this village's eyes, as you have not done any official missions for this village. Therefore I have decided to transfer you to another teacher. Sarutobi stopped, letting the information sink in. I understand Hokage-sama, however, if possible, I would like to make a request for my new sensei. Sarutobi nodded for Naruto to continue. I know of a Junin in the torture and interrogation department of the Anbu. Her name is Mitarashi Anko. If possible, I would like to be taught by her. Kurenai's eyes narrowed a little at the request while Sarutobi only raised an eyebrow. Oh, may I ask why her and not someone else? Sarutobi asked Naruto. First, is because I believe I have much to learn in the field of interrogation. While her methods may not be as effective or efficient, nor does her experience match Morino Ibiki's, I understand that Morino-san is a busy man and may not have time to teach a genin. That, and the fact that we have met already, and have not killed each other yet. Naruto said with a straight face. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow while many Junin sweat dropped. Haven't killed each other yet? Meaning you tried already? Correction, she has tried, I have not, and as you can see, her attempts were unsuccessful. I see, Sarutobi said while thinking deeply. After a minute of contemplation, he had come to a decision. Very well, I will grant your request for being the student and apprentice to one Mitarashi Anko. You will be taking C and B ranked missions under her tutelage because of your skills, and if you prove yourself, you will be allowed to take a field promotion exam to become a Chunin. The Junin in the room paled. Possibly another Anko. Naruto bowed with a mischievous grin. Thank you Hokage-sama. The room had fallen into a dead silence. Uzumaki Naruto, a newly made genin, had just landed an apprenticeship under a Tokubetsu Jonin. While apprenticeships were not completely rare, they were uncommon. Also, the fact that the second most scary person in Konoha was going to be the master. Many Jonins in the room were a little uneasy. Anbu, get Mitarashi Anko here now. Sarutobi commanded, seemingly to no particular person in the room. A shinobi, cloaked in white and an animal mask, jumped out, bowed and used a shunshin to his destination. A minute or so later, a knocking could be heard on the doors. Everyone turned to look at the door, except for Kakashi of course, he just kept reading his book. A purple-haired kunoichi walked in, with a somewhat confused look. Bowing slightly, she addressed the Hokage. Hokage-sama, you called for me? Yes, Sarutobi nodded. I did. I called you here to inform you that you have been assigned an apprentice. Sarutobi paused a little, Anko's eyes widening in shock. He will be learning how to extract information from captured shinobi from you. Anko's mouth opened to complain, but Sarutobi halted that with the raising of his hand. He has shown skills greatly beyond that of a genin, and he has also specifically requested you to be his mentor. This is non-negotiable. The two of you will form a two-person cell, and will be sent out on missions ranked C and above, depending on your skill of course. Anko's head bowed in submission. She could not refuse a direct order from a superior. I understand Hokage-sama, may I ask who he is? Sarutobi smiled, he motioned to Anko's left. His name is Uzumaki Naruto. Anko turned to her left and saw the grinning face of Uzumaki Naruto. Pointing a shaking and accusing finger at her target, she yelled. You! Quickly looking left and right, Naruto saw nobody beside him. All other Jonins had quickly ran out of her line of sight. He pointed to himself. Me? Anko nodded furiously. No, not me, must be you. Naruto pointed back at her. Anko screamed in frustration, pulling on her hair. Naruto chuckled a little. Let's go and have a proper introduction over some dango, my treat. What do you say? As if a light switch had been flicked, Anko's frustration diminished and was replaced with childish glee. Quickly grabbing a hold of the blonde, she dragged him to the nearest dango shop in record time. The Jonin's sweat dropped at the sight. Sarutobi sighed, knowing that things would be much more interesting as well as hectic. And with a combination of Anko and Naruto, he was bound to get more paperwork. The Sandaime Hokage, Shinobi no Kami, cried himself to sleep that night. Dango store. Many of the patrons in the shop looked on in shock as the duo cleaned off hundreds of sticks of dango in record time. After a few minutes, a little mountain of dishes was piled up on the table. Naruto and Anko both sat back and sighed in content. That was great, Naruto stated. I totally agree. You know kid, you're not so bad, it's just that you just get on my nerves very easily. Naruto chuckled a bit at the jibe. Yes, well I try. Anyways, let's get the real introduction started. I'll go first. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like many things, and among them is a love of Funjutsu, the forest of death, and food, such as dango. I also dislike many things, but I won't tell you who or what. I have many hobbies, but you could probably tell from my likes. Now your turn. Naruto nodded to Anko, motioning for her to start. Anko narrowed her eyes in suspicion. Why is he all of a sudden so open about himself? After staring at Naruto, who only raised an expectant eyebrow at the kunoichi, for a few minutes she seemed to give up trying to figure him out. The name's Mitarashi Anko kid. My likes are of course dango, red bean soup and tea ceremonies. My dislikes. Anko had gone silent at this point. Try as she might to hide it, she was still hurting from the betrayal of her sensei, and Naruto could see the pain she was in. Naruto's eyes softened and just sat there, giving the kunoichi some time to recompose herself. Anko took a deep breath. As I was saying, my dislikes are traitors and those who take everything at face value and judge others according to what they see. Naruto nodded slowly, having experienced the same treatment from the villagers. Any hobbies, dreams or goals for the future? Naruto asked, trying to steer the conversation away from painful memories. Anko looked thoughtful. A hobby of mine would be the process of extracting information from enemies. A definite goal for the future is to see to the death of my traitorous sensei. Anko's eyes burned with determination at the end. And I will help you achieve your goal in every way I can. That's what friends are for, right? Naruto finished with a kind smile. Anko looked absolutely shocked. Her body stiffened and her face showed surprise. Friends? He wants to be friends? Single quote. Naruto saw the smile disappear from her face, thinking for the worst. If you don't want to be friends, that's fine. Anko looked down and shook her head. No, she stated softly but firmly. Friends, I like the sound of that. Looking back up, she gave her best smile to the blonde, who returned it full force. It was the start of a beautiful relationship. Few months later, Naruto had been summoned by the Hokage, though he already knew the reason. After all, he had been training hard the past week so he could prove that he is ready for the rank of Chunin. Quickly jumping from rooftop to rooftop, he made good time towards the Hokage Tower. Hokage Tower. Knocking on the door to the Sandame's office, he heard him say, "Enter," before turning the knob and walking in. As he opened the door, he could see many jonin in the room, most likely just to watch how my test goes. Naruto thought to himself, Hokage-sama, you called me here for the test? Sarutobi nodded in confirmation. Yes, I have, he said, his hand motioning to various shinobi. They are to be your examiners. Impress them and your promotion to Chunin will almost be guaranteed. Just as he finished talking, a man with long spiky white hair walked up to Naruto. He was wearing a red sleeveless cloak with 2 yellow circles at the front, positioned above the. Underneath, he wore mesh armor covered by a green shirt kimono and matching green pants. The man, Jiraiya, looked at Naruto closely, examining him. You look just like your father. Jiraiya stated. Naruto raised an eyebrow, curious. You knew my father personally? He asked the man. Jiraiya had a sad smile on his face. Yeah, I taught him for a while. Naruto nodded in acceptance. Anyways, from what I hear, you have your mother's personality, though not as hot-headed from what I see, more in control. Jiraiya finished with a thoughtful look. Naruto smirked. Yes, my mother left Uzushio at a very young age. She did not have enough time to learn many of our clan customs and etiquette. Naruto chuckled a little. Leaving only with a basic knowledge of seals, I'm surprised she was able to teach my father. It was now Jiraiya's turn to smirk. So you think your mother's knowledge on seals was basic Well, I'll have to personally see how good your seals are. After all, I am the only seal master in Konoha. When Jiraiya finished, he had a smug smirk on his face. Naruto only stared at Jiraiya and Jiraiya stared back. Sarutobi decided to intervene before they started to get sidetracked. Ahem. Stand down, Jiraiya. We are here today to test Naruto-kun's skill to see if he has what it takes to be Chunin. Sarutobi stood up. Let us go to the testing grounds. Everyone disappeared with a poof. Private testing grounds. Okay, Naruto-kun. Your first test will be administered by Kakashi. Wait, where is he? Everyone looked around and could see neither hide nor hair of the man. Suddenly a poof signified the arrival of another person. It was Kakashi. Sorry I'm late, got lost on the road of life. Everyone's sweat dropped at his lame excuse. It was, of course, obvious that he was lying. Anyways, what's happening right now? Did Naruto get tested yet? Sarutobi shook his head in shame. No, you're the first examiner. Naruto, you and Kakashi will face off in a ninjutsu-only fight. This will see how adept you are at using jutsu for defensive and offensive purposes, understood? Naruto nodded, and then faced off against Kakashi. You ready, Kakashi-san? Naruto asked. Kakashi's eyes smiled. Come at me whenever you're ready. Naruto only smirked, and then started to make a few hand seals. Taking a deep breath in, he expelled it out as a blazing hot flamethrower. Kaden. Karyu Enden. Kakashi's eyes widened and quickly substituted himself. B rank right off the bat, he thought as he also ran through hand seals for a fire technique. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Kakashi yelled as he expelled a large amount of chakra that turned into a large ball of fire, flying towards Naruto. Naruto, who was just letting up his flames, had noticed the giant fireball that was flying at him. Quickly noting that he only burned a log, he concentrated and controlled the flow of his chakra. Running through hand seals while using his chakra to pull the moisture from the air, he yelled out his jutsu. Suijinheki. A torrent of water surrounded Naruto, twisting and turning. The fireball had not chance as it collided with the torrent of water. As soon as the fireball hit, a large amount of steam was released into the area. The Hokage and the onlookers were shocked that Naruto had such mastery over water. Pulling the moisture from the air to form water. I haven't seen something so amazing since Tobirama-sensei. Sarutobi thought. Kakashi, quickly pulling up his headband, revealing his single Sharingan, quickly formed hand seals. Deciding to use the water left from the Suijinheki, he quickly formed his jutsu and fired it into the steam, hoping to get a lucky hit. Suiryuden. Fortunately, Naruto saw it coming and quickly went through another set of hand seals. Deciding against using another defensive water technique, he opted for an earth technique. Doryuheki, he yelled out. The dirt before him shifted and moved until a wall about 5 meters wide and 7 meters tall was raised and blocked the water dragon, forcing the water to go around the wall. Naruto took this opportunity to make 3 clones and made them surround the general area that Kakashi was in. The 3 clones started to make hand signs for a barrier to trap Kakashi in while the real Naruto threw a kunai and ran through his own set of hand seals. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The one kunai quickly multiplied and became hundreds. Kakashi's eyes widened, trying to find a way out. He looked towards one of the clones and started to run towards it. Come on, come on, come on. Make it in time. Kakashi yelled in his head. Quickly getting into a comfortable range, Kakashi substituted with the clone. The clone dispelled itself before it could be pierced by the hundreds of kunai flying at it. The other 2 clones stopped their hand seals now that they were missing a third person to form a necessary barrier. The 2 clones decided to rush Kakashi, while the real Naruto stood back, providing long-range support for his clones, and firing fireball after fireball. Kakashi was forced on the defensive, dodging fireballs and the 2 clones that were trying to capture him. Taking out some wire, he attached them to shuriken and threw the shuriken, successfully capturing a clone. Quickly running through hand seals for another fire technique, Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu. Fire ran down the wire and burned the clone, causing it to dispel. However, this allowed for the other clone to close the distance and throw a jab at him. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Using a clone as a distraction so he can freely launch jutsu at me, not bad. Kakashi quickly turned and subdued the clone, holding it in position with its hands behind its back. The clone, however, smirked and all of a sudden, it exploded. Smoke covered the area where the explosion took place. A figure suddenly flew out of the smoke and landed on the ground in a heap. It was Kakashi with many light burn marks and covered in soot. Kakashi groaned and winced as he slowly sat up. Taken out twice, by explosions. This better not become a regular occurrence. Naruto chuckled and walked up to Kakashi, extending a hand. Kakashi accepted it and pulled himself up. Seeing that Naruto was breathing heavier and sweating, he smirked under his mask. At least I made him work hard. Clapping was heard and both shinobi turned and saw the Hokage clapping. Spectacular. Now Kakashi, how would you rate Naruto's ninjutsu? Sarutobi asked. Kakashi bowed. Hi, Naruto's arsenal seems to be of a moderate size, and he does not have many high-level jutsu, thus putting him at a high chunin. However, his timing and execution of the jutsu is superb. Honestly, I believe that he has the required skills in ninjutsu to become a Tokubetsu Jonin. 1. The Hokage smiled, pleased that his adoptive grandson was already showing so much skill. And next you will be tested in genjutsu. Simply show what you can cast and what you can dispel. Kurenai-san, please come forward. With that, a black-haired, red-eyed beauty stepped forward. Pleased to meet you, Naruto-san. Kurenai said. Naruto nodded his head. Let's get this started. Hit me with your strongest genjutsu. Kurenai raised her eyebrow. If you say so, she said while flipping through hand seals. Megan. Jubaku Satsu. A tree sprang up from the ground and gripped Naruto, binding his arms to the branches and his legs to the trunk. An arm appeared out of the tree and pressed a kunai up against Naruto's neck. Kurenai seemed to phase out from the tree, kunai still in hand. Your overconfidence has just caused you to die. If this was a real battle, Naruto-san. Kurenai spoke from above. Naruto turned his head back towards Kurenai and disappeared in a flurry of sakura petals. Noticing the familiar genjutsu, Kurenai stopped the circulation of chakra within her system and then sent out a pulse, disrupting the illusion. The world around her shimmered and disappeared. Looking around, Kurenai saw that the training grounds was clear and Naruto was nowhere in sight. Shifting her stance a little, the ground broke apart underneath her, sending her into free fall. Another illusion? Kurenai thought to herself while falling into the darkness of the pit. Closing her eyes, she gathered her chakra again, and sent out another pulse, breaking through the second illusion. Opening her eyes, she found Naruto standing not half a meter away. Kurenai-san, in a battle you would have died just now. Kurenai was surprised and embarrassed that she was bested in her own specialty. May I ask what that technique was? Naruto stood unmoving for a second before answering. That was my best genjutsu. It takes advantage of the fact that when you use a genjutsu you establish a link to the target's brain with your chakra. By using the same link that you established, I send my own wave of chakra, overpowering yours, and sending back my own genjutsu. Even the Sharingan would be hard-pressed to detect and dispel the genjutsu. 2. Kurenai and those who knew how genjutsu worked nodded in understanding. Kurenai looked at Naruto, curious. That couldn't have been your only genjutsu, right? You must have others. Naruto nodded in confirmation. I do, however that was my only high-level genjutsu. All my other genjutsu are just there to throw the enemy off. Kurenai's eyebrows scrunched up in confusion. Wouldn't it be much more efficient if you just used a more powerful genjutsu? You would be able to stun the enemy for at least a few seconds. With the smaller genjutsu, they could just dispel quickly. I understand what you mean, however, that only works when you have multiple people. How so? Think about it like this. In a full-on frontal fight, you may not have enough time to cast genjutsu, so large-scale or very powerful genjutsu may not work. Also, smaller genjutsu take little to no chakra to use. And while they may not take very much time to dispel, by using a large number of distractors, the enemy would have to put his hands up to dispel every time he comes across a genjutsu. The time it takes to dispel every genjutsu compiles, and eventually there will be an opening in his defenses. Also, the total amount of chakra going into the numerous smaller genjutsu may not be as much as a very powerful one. Kurenai looked at Naruto, speechless. I've never thought of using genjutsu like that. Naruto smiled. Well then, there's something new for you to experiment with. Kurenai nodded and smiled back. I will, she said, and then turned towards the Hokage. Naruto-san has shown decent skill in genjutsu. The technique he created should be able to counter any genjutsu directed at him. Although his repertoire is small, it is effective. I would rate him at a Chunin level in genjutsu, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi nodded, clearly happy with the results. Next test, taijutsu. Maida Guy, come forward. Sarutobi ordered. A man wearing a green spandex suit came up. Yosh, I shall test the flames of your youth, Naruto-san. He struck the nice guy pose, complete with the glinting teeth. Everyone in the testing grounds shivered. Naruto twitched then shuddered. Shaking his head, he got into a loose stance with his arms in front of him. Giving the man in green a nod, Guy surged forward, aiming a punch at Naruto's chest. Seeing the punch coming, Naruto grabbed the bottom of Guy's wrist while using his other hand. Naruto grabbed the area just before Guy's elbow joint. Pushing the elbow down, this caused Guy to lose his balance, but he quickly corrected himself. Going into a crouching stance, he thrust his elbow into Naruto's solar plexus. Naruto's eyes widened as the hit connected. He could only bend his body backwards in order to soften the blow. Taking a few steps back, Naruto shook himself out. Taking a deep breath, he got into his ready stance again. Guy came charging again, but this time with a flying kick. Dynamic entry. Naruto quickly ducked down, the kick almost shaving his hair and scalp off. Turning around, Naruto saw Guy already launching a roundhouse to his face. Stepping slightly to the side, Naruto caught the leg and stepped in. Putting his own leg behind Guy's supporting left leg, he tripped and pushed Guy onto his back. Naruto pulled back his hand, ready to knock the man out when Guy pulled both legs in and kangaroo kicked Naruto off of him. Naruto flew back a good 20 meters before flipping into an upright position and landing into his ready stance again. That really hurt. Naruto winced in pain. "Don't worry, my youthful friend. Just give it your best," Guy shouted back in his own unique way. Naruto thought to himself for a few seconds before looking back to Guy. "Nay Guy-san, you wear weights, right?" Guy nodded in confirmation. "Hi Naruto-san, I do. Why do you ask?" "Well, I thought that if I give it my all, then it's only fair that you do as well. So I want you to take off your weights and then fight me." The bystanders were a little shocked at what Naruto was requesting. "No," Guy said while he shook his head. "If I do that, then I'm afraid it might be too dangerous for you. I could unintentionally injure you." Naruto nodded his head in understanding, a little disappointed that Guy refused his request. Before he thought of something, Naruto raised his eyebrows. Could this work? Deciding to test the waters a little, Naruto shouted back to Guy. "Guy-san, that is very youthful," Naruto shouted in the same tone that Guy usually does. The spectators were caught off guard and wondered what Naruto was planning. What do you mean, Naruto-san?" Guy asked, a little scared of the response. Naruto bit back the urge to smirk. Deciding to continue with his acting, he put up a sad and disappointed look. "It seems your flames of youth are dying, Guy-san." Guy looked horrified and shocked at this. "It is very unyouthful to not give your best when your opponent is giving theirs, you know." Guy was frozen on his spot. Have I truly lost my flames of youth? Have they dimmed so much? Shaking his head out of such thoughts, Guy looked back at Naruto with newfound determination. "Yosh, I realize my mistakes, Naruto-san. I shall rectify them by taking you seriously," Guy yelled at the top of his lungs as he quickly took off both his weights on his legs. The Hokage and other Jonin sweat dropped. Tricked so easily, everyone thought at the same time. Guy charged at Naruto with his top speed, throwing the right hook. Naruto, who couldn't dodge in time, was being punched around like a punching bag. Naruto grunted in pain from every hit that Guy got in. Guy, who had finally decided to stop beating Naruto up, gave a final kick which made Naruto roll and flip over himself several times on the ground before sliding to a stop. "It's over, Naruto-san. You have shown me your skills, and they are more than sufficient for Chunin. Plus, you need energy for the next few tests as well," Guy said, preparing to walk away. Naruto lay on the ground, eyes closed and taking in deep breaths. "Wait, Guy-san, I still haven't shown you what I've got yet," Naruto said from his position on the ground. Everybody looked at Naruto, surprised that he could still fight. "Hokage-sama, you had better stop him before he hurts himself," one Jonin said, others nodding in agreement. Now, let us see what he can do before that," Sarutobi said before waving them off. Taking a few more breaths, Naruto got up to a sitting position. "Gotta love purified chakra. Just keeps you energized forever. Healed most wounds already, though that could also be Kyuubi." Getting back up into a standing position, Naruto took off his now tattered cloak and cracked armor and put them to the side. Good God, just how strong is he? Now in just his Uzumaki clan robes. 3. He got into his stance again, but this time Naruto disappeared in a show of speed. Guy, who was stunned by the speed, suddenly felt a blunt force hit him the back as he flew forward. Quickly orientating himself, he turned around and saw Naruto disappear again. Only from years of training and missions did his senses tell him that there was danger, so he brought his arms up to his left side as a shield. Not a second later, a kick was aimed at his left side, hitting his arms, propelling him towards his right. Guy tumbled on the ground for a good distance before hitting the earth wall that Naruto made earlier. Guy slowly pushed himself back up. His speed is amazing, it surpasses even mine, he thought to himself while staring at Naruto's figure 30 meters away, that is, before said figure disappeared in a blur again. Reappearing before Guy, Naruto stood into a slow stance, hand brought back ready for a punch. Seeing this, Guy's eyes widened and he decided to dive out of the way. Sokotsu. The punch impacted against the wall, literally turning most of it into dust. Sarutobi was shocked. That's like Tsunade's super strength. Maybe even more powerful. The other Jonin looking at the scene were also thinking something along the same lines. Guy himself was unnerved at the power behind the punch. Sighing, Guy raised his hand, palm facing outwards, telling Naruto to stop. That would be more than enough, Naruto-san. Guy said in an uncharacteristically serious tone. You have definitely proved yourself to be very proficient in taijutsu. I can see that your style revolves around counter-attacking, but you are also comfortable with launching very devastating attacks. Guy commented, turning towards the Hokage. He continued. Naruto-san here has shown more than enough skill in taijutsu to become chunin. In fact, I recommend that he become a tokubetsu jonin, specializing in taijutsu and a secondary in ninjutsu. Sarutobi nodded, accepting the recommendation. Very well. Uzumaki Naruto, you have been found skillful, enough in the fundamental arts of shinobi to become a chunin, and therefore, upon your completion of 300 missions, you will be granted a field promotion to chunin. When the time comes and you have filled your mission quota, you will be promoted to tokubetsu jonin. Sarutobi said in a voice of authority. Naruto bowed his head. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Your skills in kenjutsu and fuinjutsu will be evaluated in private and at a later time. Sarutobi then turned to the rest of the Jonins. You're all dismissed. With that they all bowed and vanished with a poof. Hokage Tower. Office. Sarutobi, Jiraiya and Naruto all appeared back in the office. Sarutobi looked at Naruto before speaking. Unfortunately, we cannot evaluate your kenjutsu skills today because our kenjutsu specialist is currently out on a mission. However, Jiraiya is here and he is the seal master of Konoha and will be able to evaluate your skills in fuinjutsu. By the time Sarutobi finished, Jiraiya had a huge smug grin on his face while Naruto looked skeptical. Are you sure, Hokage-sama? He doesn't look like much. Sarutobi smiled in amusement while Jiraiya twitched. Don't you know who I am? Jiraiya started. I am Jiraiya of the Sannin. Yes, I know, Naruto said, cutting him off. You, Tsunade and Orochimaru were dubbed the Sannin for your teamwork after being defeated by Sanshuo no Hanzo. Jiraiya was speechless, but before he could think of a retort, Naruto started talking again. Let's get this over with. You are here to evaluate my seal work, but first, I am going to evaluate yours to see if you are fit to evaluate mine. Naruto said in a tone that didn't leave any room for arguments. You have an hour to make 2 seals. The first will incapacitate anyone standing on it, and the second seal is to be applied onto a person that will nullify the effects of the first seal. I'm going to get something to eat. When I get back I expect you to be finished. With that, Naruto walked out the door. Jiraiya was shocked that a teen was ordering him around. He looked towards Sarutobi, who only shrugged. You better get started. Wouldn't want to disappoint him now, would you? Jiraiya hung his head in defeat and started to work on the seal while grumbling about things too quiet to hear. An hour later, the door opened in the Hokage's office. Sarutobi could be seen sitting in his chair reading a certain book and giggling perversely while Jiraiya was right behind him, reading over his shoulder. Clearing his throat, Naruto made his presence known. Jiraiya-san, did you make the seals? Sarutobi's and Jiraiya's head both shot up at the voice of Naruto. Sarutobi quickly opened his drawer, put his book in and slammed it close. Jiraiya, however, had a huge grin on his face, showing his pride in his own works. Naruto merely raised his eyebrow, expecting an answer. After almost a minute of silence, Jiraiya finally got the message and showed Naruto his seal. Well, how do y'all like it, Gaki? Of course, I don't expect you to understand what is written on this paper, but this should show you my awesome skills in seals, right? Jiraiya finished with a wide grin, expecting admiration, but what he got was completely unexpected to him. You fail, Naruto said, wiping Jiraiya's smug smile off of his face. You are not qualified to evaluate my skills in fuinjutsu. Jiraiya spluttered. What do you mean I'm not qualified? Both seals do their job. While that may be true, you have made them too complicated. Jiraiya chuckled while shaking his head. I can't believe I'm arguing with a teen. Naruto glared at Jiraiya. I am not just a teen. I have finished all 100 levels in the Uzumaki clan's fuinjutsu. I have surpassed my grandfather's skill in fuinjutsu. Do not underestimate me. Gaki, just because you have finished all 100 levels does not mean anything if you can't apply it all. I bet your teacher just went easy on you and let you pass. Naruto sighed. Jiraiya-san, How would you rate my mother's skill in Fuinjutsu? Jiraiya's hand went to his chin and got into a thoughtful pose. She would probably be around my level, if not a bit better. After all, she did teach your father who had surpassed me in Fuinjutsu. Naruto raised an eyebrow. I have greatly overestimated your skills in Fuinjutsu then. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. Why do you even need to know your mother's level in Fuinjutsu anyways? Because, it would give you a sense of what level she was at and what level won him. Before leaving Uzushio, my mother had officially completed only 37 levels of our 100-level course. Now when she left, I assume she took some scrolls with her, and if she taught herself while in Konoha, then I estimate her skills would be around a level 40 seal master. Using this information, I would have approximately 60 levels over you, Jiraiya-san. Jiraiya huffed. Levels don't mean anything, Gaki. Naruto stayed silent for a while. The theory taught at higher levels is much more advanced than what you currently know. We teach a much older and primitive style of sealing. Seals and arrays date before the creation of modern Fuinjutsu. Back then, you could turn one substance into another through the usage of a seal. We take what people used to know a few thousand years ago and apply it to our seals today. 5. Throughout the whole conversation, Jiraiya's eyes widened little by little and his jaws dropped lower and lower. Anyways, it was nice meeting you, Jiraiya-san. Good day, Hokage-sama. Naruto bowed and left the room. Jiraiya stood there, mouth still gaping at the information that he was told. I never knew seals could be applied in such a way. Shaking himself out of his shock, he turned towards Sarutobi, who seemed amused at what just happened. Sarutobi shrugged and pulled out his book again to continue where he left off. Few days later, Training Ground 44, Naruto and Anko were having a discussion in the forest about how to break an enemy's willpower and mind. Through the middle of the discussion, an Anbu showed up. Mitarashi-san, Uzumaki-san, Hokage-sama requires your presence immediately. The Anbu said, still in his crouching position. Understood, we'll be right there. Naruto replied. The 3 puffs of smoke signified their use of a shunshin. Hokage's office. Naruto, Anko and the Anbu all appeared in the Hokage's office. The Anbu bowed, then used another shunshin. Anko-san, Naruto-kun. I have news from Hitaki Kakashi of Team 7. Sarutobi said. Naruto raised his eyebrow. What does this have to do with us? He asked. Anko nodded as well. They have been sent on a C-ranked mission, however on the way they have been ambushed by 2 C-ranked nuke nen. Normally this would not prove to be much of a problem with Kakashi on the team, however, this is an escort mission and Kakashi is expecting some heavier resistance later on. This is where you come in. Naruto raised his hands in a, stop right there, gesture. Wait a second, the client paid for a C rank, but they were attacked by shinobi, correct? Sarutobi nodded. Did the client pay for protection against shinobi? No, Sarutobi said while shaking his head. Then why did they continue the mission? Anko decided to butt in this time. Sarutobi sighed. Originally, Kakashi wanted to abandon the mission, however, Uchiha Sasuke insisted that they continue. Of course you know what happens when he says go. Sakura follows, and since Sai is from Danzo's root faction, they would outvote Kakashi 3-1. They had a vote? Anko shouted. As their superior officer he has the highest authority. Why vote for the outcome? Sarutobi rubbed his forehead. It doesn't matter anymore, the fact is they have gone ahead and are in need of backup and you're it. Do you accept? Naruto and Anko looked at each other. Naruto shrugged. Sure old man, just let us get prepared and we'll set off right away.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.